Hello, viewers. This week we're going to be reviewing True Detective. It's a show from HBO, and if you haven't seen it yet, you should. We're going to get into why this was such a great show and what it means for the future of television in general. One of the things that really got me about True Detective this season was how a show was able to get Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey to sign on to something that was coming from a generally unknown director. Creator. It's very impressive to see someone basically come out of nowhere and create a show that has a following and a depth like this. I'm going to get into what the show is about, well, the plot, different devices that the show draws from, and why I think that this show was such a success, and why I hope that this show is around for many years to come.
Vermilion Sheriff requested assistance with a 4019 Canefields outside of Erath. I'd been on the job about 3 months till then. 2 previous cases were open and shut. It was January the 3rd, 1995, my daughter's birthday.
The series starts out with Dora Lang. She's killed, left in a sugarcane field, injected with methamphetamine and LSD. And we are put on the procedural investigation of Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson trying to figure out who did this. As the series progresses, we come to learn more and more about these two men and really less and less about the killer. From what I've read, the series was never intended to be a masturbatory exercise on serial killers, but instead was meant to be an in-depth character study of these two men. And it succeeds at that, and it's probably why other characters come off as secondary in the show. From here, we're introduced to a man in Angola prison who knows Dora Lang, had a relationship with Dora Lang, and this gentleman actually ends up playing a pretty pivotal role throughout the series. One of the reasons I think this show did so well is the strength of the first episode. It's a really great way to introduce the characters, having it flip throughout the time frames. The show isn't trying to trick you into any kind of revelations, as we'll see throughout the course of the series. And you're just kind of hit with this dark, brooding atmosphere that's really brought to life by the cinematography of the director and through the writing of the sole writer to write for this entire show. One of the unique things about this show is that as opposed to having a writing team, the writer for the show actually wrote every bit of dialogue in every episode of the 8 episode season. I think that this is a practice that I don't know why it's not practiced more in Hollywood. If you have somebody who has a vision for a show and who has a smart, clever way of bringing about that vision, I don't see the need to make them go through a democratic process when trying to get their ideas seen on screen. We've seen other examples of this, for instance, in The Walking Dead, where the first season was really spectacular, and then AMC really dropped the ball by handing over the existing creative team to a new one who was more in line with their money-saving agenda.
You know the sheriff has got a stake in this place, too. Oh, Christ.
The king's children were marked. They became his angels.
The Yellow King, Carcosa.
Nut job.
The Yellow King and Carcosa are plot devices that writers have been using for a long time. The Yellow King was first coined by Robert W. Chambers, who was a weird fiction genre writer, cosmic indifference, so to speak, where these writers basically wrote about different ideas about the insignificance of man compared to the vastness of the cosmos, and dealing with the ramifications of kind of having that awakening. In the book, The Yellow King, there's a play that's circulating throughout the world, and people who read the play become insane. There's different examples of this throughout the book. True Detective has something that's similar to this, where they find a videotape later on in the series that contains images of children being raped and murdered, and this videotape is the catalyst to reuniting the two detectives and to getting information that they need from people who are involved in this girl's disappearance, who, while they may not have actually perpetrated what's actually going on the tape, their negligence aided in allowing this type of thing to happen and to keep happening. Now, if you haven't heard of this yet, in the 4th episode of the series, there's a really great oneer, which is what cinematographers refer to as a scene that they use one take on. And not only is this a great oneer in the same, you can mention in the same breath as the oneer that was introduced from the movie Children of Men, but this is a great oneer that has a really in-depth action sequence. It's also a very crucial part of the plot. Up until this point, the show's been very procedural, very slow and kind of mounting, and this is kind of the explosion of the series, where Rust has to go back undercover, back into his old narco days, and infiltrate a gang of people with a person that he's trying to get information from in order to find the person that he believes is responsible for the murders of his dead body. This scene is brilliant. It's very well done. It gives an image of the inner city and of biker gangs that's far more menacing than anything I've seen on even shows like The Wire or Sons of Anarchy. This scene and the drama that entails in it makes those people look like they're wearing Halloween costumes and just walking around, read from a script. The scene in True Detective feels real, and it has a menacing nature to it that I have not seen on television before. Now, one thing that I read out there that kind of caught me off guard was Emily Nussbaum's article from the New Yorker, basically claiming that the True Detective television show was a bro hug of a bunch of guys basically surrounded by paper-thin women just there to get nude and be used as vehicles for them to fuck. And I can't disagree with that article strongly enough. I think it's pretty ridiculous that modern day feminism has deteriorated into what it is. My mother and my grandmother were both involved in the feminist movement. I have members of my family are women who are active in getting women the right to vote. And it seems today that unless you have a show that predominantly features the type of woman that they feel is relevant, then your show has somehow become sexist. She didn't like the show, and she also wrote articles panning the last episode of the show, which, no show is perfect, but I felt that the show had a pretty satisfying conclusion to it. I highly suggest that you read her article, as it's a pretty glaring example of what's wrong with the ideas that feminists are trying to project today and the standards that they've created concerning what they feel is acceptable and unacceptable portrayals of women. That's all for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. It's my first one. I'm going to be doing more. In the future, I'm hoping to have more critical analysis on things. This was a show, though, that really caught my attention and that I really loved, and I hope you check it out.
Strange the world outside gets. I know that there's someone that understands me.